It's time for the news.
For the 11th consecutive day, the Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip continues with bombardment, with a death toll reaching 2,900. The draft resolution drafted by Russia for a ceasefire in Gaza failed to obtain the minimum required votes at the UN Security Council. Algeria calls on the international community to urgently save the defenseless and most vulnerable Palestinian people in Gaza. And the President of the Republic has praised the high sense of patriotism shown by the Algerians living abroad on the occasion of the National Migration Day, commemorating the massacres of October 17, 1961. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Smani. Starting today's news with the situation in Palestine, the death toll as a result of the Israeli aggression against Gaza and the West Bank is about 2,900. At least 60 people were killed today and dozens were injured when an Israeli warplane targeted buildings in the central and southern parts of the Gaza Strip. An occupation aircraft bombed a house belonging to the El Lamdani family in Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip, resulting in the death of more than 40 people, most of whom were displaced from northern Gaza. Now, the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates has condemned Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people, accusing the occupying power of committing the crimes of genocide and ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip for the 11th day on a row. Asia Picard has the details.
This came following today's massacres in Rafah and Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip, which left 80 people dead, including children and women, and heavy destruction to homes and infrastructure. It also condemned in a statement the targeting of health centers, hospitals, press crews, schools, universities, and others. It said it has become clear that the occupying state is continuing with the crime of ethnic cleansing, using internationally prohibited weapons to get rid of the Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip as an integral part of premeditated plans to get rid of Israel's strategic crisis, represented by the presence of millions of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, as is clear from the massive killings committed by Israeli warplanes around the clock and the scenes of mass destruction and humanitarian catastrophe in all its aspects in the Gaza Strip, as well as the suffocation of the occupied West Bank and intensifying expulsion and displacement of citizens. The Foreign Ministry stressed that what the Israeli occupation is doing is not in any way related to the pretext of self-defense, but rather aims to totally obliterate the Palestinian existence in the Gaza Strip, leading to the liquidation of the Palestinian cause and changing the course of how the international community looks at the rights of Palestinians, which is also what is promoted by the misleading Israeli propaganda and disinformation campaigns, which makes every person, wherever he is, an accused.
Now, the Israeli occupation is continuing its aggression against the Gaza Strip for the 11th day, with bombardment from warplanes, gunboats and artillery targeting homes, towers and residential buildings, leaving thousands of civilians dead and wounded, mainly in addition to the destruction of property and infrastructure. The critical situation in the Gaza Strip was confirmed by the member of the Hamas Political Bureau, Mohammed Nazel.
Actually, the situation now is very bad. That Israeli army is killing thousands of our people. They are kids, women, elders. They destroyed hospitals, schools, mosques, all civilians' buildings. They are destroying it. So actually, the situation shows that Israeli troops should stop the aggression on Gaza. This is what we call the international community to do it.
Regarding the failure of the Russian ceasefire resolution that was not adopted by the Security Council members, the Hamas official deplored the conspiracy of different countries against Palestinians.
Actually, we think there is a conspiracy from America and European countries on our issue. They don't want to make any ceasefire to stop aggression on our people and on Gaza Strip. So this shows that America and European countries are biased to Israeli government.
Mr. Mohammed Nazal also denounced the Western media coverage that do not show the reality of the atrocities committed by the Israeli occupation against the Palestinians, stressing that the Media Bureau of Hamas is working on showing the reality of the massacre committed against Palestinians in Gaza.
Actually, we are calling all medias in West countries, in Arab countries, in African countries, in Asia countries. We are talking with them. We are explaining our stand, and we are making contacts with many countries in diplomacy field to explain what we are facing in Gaza Strip. We are facing great actions and great aggression on our people.
That was Mohammed Nazal, a member of the Hamas Political Bureau, telling us about the critical situation in Gaza and the efforts of the Hamas Media Bureau to show the reality of the Israeli atrocities. Now, a draft resolution by Russia in the UN Security Council Tuesday failed to obtain the minimum required 9 votes in the 19 member countries. The resolution calls for a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons in the war waged by Israeli occupation on the Gaza Strip. Asia Bika again.
The draft text condemns violence against civilians and all terrorist acts without naming any party. The draft resolution received 5 votes in favor and 4 against, while 6 members abstained from voting. Russia, China, the United Arab Emirates, Gabon and Mozambique voted in favor of the resolution, while the United States, Britain, France and Japan voted against it, and Albania, Brazil, Ghana, Malta, Switzerland and Ecuador abstained from voting. The Russian permanent representative to the Security Council, Vasily Nebenzia, expressed concern about the unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Palestine's United Nations permanent observer Riyad Mansour said that what's happening in Gaza is not a military operation, but a massacre against Palestinian civilians. He said for 11 days the world had been watching the Israeli occupation assaulting 2 million Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, being killed, injured and displaced. The Israeli occupation has not spared a single Palestinian family in Gaza. No one should forget that Palestinian lives matter too, and no one should entertain the illusion that killing more Palestinians will make Israelis more secure. He also wondered why would the Security Council be unable to call for a ceasefire to stop the assault and the massacres. The humanitarian and health system in Gaza are collapsing. 1 million people have been displaced. People can't even bury their loved ones and mourn them. Lifting the siege and ensuring immediate and unhindered humanitarian access are equally important.
You're listening to Radio Algeria International. More news about the situation in Gaza. The Prime Minister of the State of Palestine, Mohammed Shtayyeh, said today that the priority now is to stop the Israeli occupation's aggression against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, ensure the delivery of medical and food supplies, restore the delivery of electricity and water, and operate water treatment plants and desalination plants that to avert a humanitarian and health disaster in the besieged Gaza Strip. This came during a meeting, or his meeting, with the Norwegian envoy to the Middle East peace process, Hilda Haraldset, in his office in Ramallah, in the presence of Norway's representative to Palestine, Torn Vesti. The Prime Minister renewed his call to exert pressure on Israel to stop its aggression and adhere to international humanitarian law and the necessity of creating a political horizon and path based on international legitimacy and the Arab Peace Initiative to end the occupation and establish the Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. Shtaya expressed his rejection of the Israeli attempt to displace the Palestinian people from the north to the Gaza Strip towards the south, and also to force them to leave the Gaza Strip and move abroad, describing this scenario as a new Nakba or catastrophe for the Palestinian people in reference to the 1948 Nakba, in which more than 900,000 Palestinians were forced out of their homes when Israel was created in Palestine and became refugees at home and in neighboring Arab countries. Now, a day after Colombian President Gustavo Petro threatened to suspend relations with Israel due to their decision to halt security material exports to Colombia in response to his Middle East crisis stance, Foreign Minister Alvaro Leiva asked Israeli ambassador to apologize and leave. Asia Bekar.
Using his X account, Leiva demanded respect for the president and accused the ambassador of being rude. Leiva published on X that the history of universal diplomacy will record as a milestone the senseless rudeness of Israel's ambassador in Colombia towards President Gustavo. Shame on him. He should at least apologize and leave. Intelligence is confronted with intelligence. There are states at stake, as he put it. The statement from Leiva intensifies an already elevated state of diplomatic tension between Colombia and apartheid Israel. Petro declared his refusal to support genocides and pledged humanitarian aid to Gaza, where thousands have lost their lives in inhuman airstrikes by the occupying Israeli warplanes. The Israeli occupation confirmed the decision to stop sending arms ammunition to Colombia, even though a good part of the weapons used by the Colombian armed forces come from the colonizing authorities of the Israeli occupation.
You're listening to Radio Algeria International, broadcasting from the capital, Algiers. Now back to our national news. The President of the Republic has praised the high sense of patriotism shown by Algerians living abroad at every national event and in all circumstances. In his message on the occasion of the National Migration Day, commemorating the massacres of October 17, 1961, the President said, Algerian nationals everywhere in the world treasure the memory of Algerian martyrs who died on October 17, 1961. He said the Algerian community is showing its spirit of patriotism amid the lies and campaigns carried out by hostile parties at a time when our country is taking unprecedented steps in the construction of the new Algeria. He added that the commemoration of the National Migration Day is an opportunity to recall the achievements of Algerian martyrs, but also to renew Algiers' loyalty to the oath made to the martyrs who sacrificed their lives so that Algeria could recover its freedom. The President of the Republic seized the opportunity to reaffirm the permanent concern of the state to take charge of the issues of all her community all over the world. On this occasion, a minute's silence was observed nationwide in memory of the martyrs killed during the massacres of 17 October 1961 in Paris. The silence was held in application of a decision by the President of the Republic, which coincides with the National Immigration Day. Speaking on this occasion, the Minister of Mujahideen, Laïd Arbiga, has this to say. This barbaric crime committed by the French police on this tragic day to show the other heinous facet of a long series of abject crimes committed against humanity and which will continue to be scribbled in the memory of the nation. The demonstrations of the October 17, 1962 in the communities showcase their homeland is the sacred cause. The 20th Nordic African ministerial meeting between African and Nordic countries was given the kickoff today in Algiers. The meeting is attended by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Mr. Ahmed Attaf. The meeting taking place for the first time in Algeria since its launching in 2001 at the initiative of the late Lena Linde, former Swedish foreign minister, is being held under the theme Africa Nordic Countries Strengthening Dialogue Based on Shared Values. Speaking at the opening, he said,
الوضع المأساوي الذي يعيشه
the tragic situation in which our brothers live in the occupied Palestinian territories, in particular in the Gaza Strip, which is besieged and bombarded before the eyes of the whole world without any consideration for humanitarian norms and international law. Algeria, which reiterates her full solidarity with our Palestinian brothers, calls on the international community to urgently save the defenseless and the most vulnerable and to put an end to these practices and aggressions by reactivating the peace process to allow the Palestinian people to establish their independent state on the 1967 borders with Al-Quds Sharif as its capital. Now, still with our news, some 30 countries are taking part in the two-day session, including the 5 Nordic countries, including Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland and Iceland, as well as a large number of African countries representing the different regions of the continent. The program for this session includes a wide range of activities, including 3 conferences. The first address the theme of peace, security and the promotion of dialogue to resolve conflicts, while the second will focus on the economic partnership between Africa and the countries of Northern Europe. The third will focus on strengthening multilateral cooperation between the two groups within international organizations as the United Nations. This conference is being held in a delicate international and regional context marked by a wave of crises and tensions that are shaking and weakening countries, particularly in Africa and especially in Algeria's close neighbors in the Sahel region, leading to the spread of famine and insecurity, as well as the scourge of terrorism and organized crime groups. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has received his Swedish counterpart, Tobias Billström, ahead of the beginning of the African Nordic ministerial meeting held here in Algiers. The talks tackled cooperation relations between the two countries at the bilateral and multilateral levels, given that the two countries are partners attached to the values and principles of the UN Charter. Both officials underlined the importance of abiding by international law regarding regional and international crises, notably the Palestinian issue, the crisis in Ukraine, and the Western Sahara conflict, in addition to other crises and tensions that threaten peace and security and hinder economic development efforts. The Swedish diplomacy chief seized the opportunity to shed light on the importance of the African Nordic ministerial meeting.
I'm very pleased to be attending this meeting between the foreign ministers of Africa and Nordic countries. This is a meeting which I think serves to underline the very good relationship that we have between these two regions in the world. Many of the possibilities that we have to deepen our cooperations come out of a meeting like this, which has been functioning for many years, and it's a real pleasure to be here. We will have an opportunity to talk both about global issues, about regional issues and also about bilateral issues, and this contributes very much to the informal dialogue that we have on certain issues which are of course very high on the agenda right now, but also issues of more long-standing interest for both of our regions. I was very happy right now to meet with His Excellency the Foreign Minister of Algeria, Mr. Attaf, and I think that the conversations that we had were very valuable both to him and to me.
Earlier, the Minister Ahmed Attaf met with many of his counterparts as part of their participation in the African Nordic ministerial meeting, notably his counterparts from Rwanda, Angola, Mauritania, Tunisia, Tanzania, Denmark, Togo, and among others. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Next is a special program on the occasion of the celebrations and commemoration in memory of the martyrs that killed during the massacres of 17 October 1961 in Paris.
Perhaps the most important reason why the heinous massacre of peaceful Algerian demonstrators in Paris on the 17th of October 1961 remained so shrouded in mystery for so long was simply the French government's refusal to talk about it. The Parisian press covered the events, and the National Liberation Front FLN, which was strenuously fighting for Algeria's freedom and independence, certainly made efforts to publicize the wanton violence against peaceful Algerian demonstrators. French administrators at first categorically denied the massacre had taken place, and they kept archives related to the matter locked down. But the number of Algerians killed in these painful events is set for several hundred victims for that very reason.
يا شهيد الوطن يا مثال الوفاء يا شهيد الوطن.
It wasn't until a seasoned historian named Jean-Luc Enodi published the first really in-depth investigation into the events in 1991, and the public really became aware of the deadly events. And even then, public awareness was highly politicized. Debate really began in earnest in 1999, only after the sinister former police chief Maurice Papon shamelessly sued Enodi for libel. After that, 17th of October came a potent symbol for French state violence against peaceful Algerians, and because of that, it has remained a really sensitive topic. The 17th of October massacre was unique within metropolitan France in the scale of brutal violence. Police in Paris savagely killed several hundred peaceful Algerian pro-independence demonstrators and imprisoned another 14,000 others in detention centers around the city in the days following the savage slaughter. The October 17th, 1961 horrendous massacre that occurred in Paris towards the end of the Algerian Revolution is a key event. According to the main narrative, the extremely violent scenes of French police officers throwing handcuffed Algerians into the Seine River happened around the Place Saint-Michel at the very center of Paris and manifested itself in the hot-blooded moment of suppression of massive demonstrations. What further research reveals, on the contrary, is that this heinous massacre occurred in a multiplicity of spatialities and temporalities. As mentioned above, one particular measure of exception taken by the sinister then French police prefect Maurice Papon consisted in a curfew specifically targeting Algerians on October 5th, 1961. This arbitrary measure motivated the FLN in France to organize massive demonstrations in Paris on October 17th. all Algerian men were asked to join the demonstrations unarmed. Any person found with even a knife risked being severely punished by the FLN. In the center of Paris that evening, in order to form 3 corteges protesting the arbitrary curfew in particular and the brutal French colonialism in general. During that somber day, many peaceful Algerians were arrested, systematically beaten up with batons, and even sometimes shot and thrown into the Seine River. Maurice Papon was present in the command room of the Prefecture of Police, only meters away from the bloodbath of Saint-Michel and the lack of any order to prevent the violence and killings, as well as the false rumors on police radio that some officers had been killed by Algerians, makes him effectively the commander responsible for the horrendous massacre of peaceful Algerian protesters, something for which he will never be prosecuted. Finally, in 2001, a memorialization plaque was set up in Saint-Michel to commemorate the memory of the numerous Algerians killed in the bloody suppression of the Pacific demonstration of October 17, 1961. As is often the case when it comes to the memorialization of colonial crimes in France, those responsible are not directly cited, making it a crime with no criminals. And as explained at the beginning of this report, such a narrative also significantly reduces the spatial and temporal scope of the massacre itself. For this reason, one might value more another official plaque set up in Saint-Denis, a Paris suburb, in 2007. On October 17, 1961, during the glorious Algerian Liberation War, 30,000 Algerian men and women of the Paris region peacefully demonstrated against the arbitrary curfew that was imposed on them. As is widely known, this peaceful movement was brutally suppressed on the order of the prefect of Paris. Demonstrators were killed by bullets, hundreds of men and women were thrown into the Seine River, and thousands were beaten up and imprisoned. Dead bodies of Algerians were found in the Canal Saint-Denis. Against racism and forgetting, for democracy and human rights, this plaque was inaugurated by Mayor of Saint-Denis, Didier Paillard, on March 21, 2007. Nevertheless, here again, the broader context of colonialism remains unspoken, illustrating once more that France has never fully engaged with the structural racist and colonial violence of its past, let alone of its present, which operates in direct continuity with this wanton violence.
مع إذاعة الجزائر الدولية لن تفوتكم لحظة واحدة من الأخبار